A few weeks ago, Elon Musk said that Tesla would cumulatively spend $10 billion on AI compute and infrastructure by the end of 2024. I assume that meant cumulatively over the past decade. He actually meant 2024 alone, and that has huge implications, including the fact that nobody is going to catch up. Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. I want to start with this post from Elons catalog and then Elon Musk's response to it, and I want to break down exactly what this means and exactly why Elon is saying what he's saying. So first, obviously, let's just go ahead and read the post. Elons said, Tesla spent $1 billion on training compute in Q1 and doubled their compute capacity in the process. $1 billion, yeah, that is a really big number. This, of course, from the Q1 slide deck, and we'll look at that in just a minute. Then Elon responded to this saying, Tesla will spend around $10 billion this year in combined training and inference AI, the latter being primarily in the car. Any company not spending at this level and doing so efficiently cannot compete. My small addition to this was, I would add to this that any company just starting out needs to be spending more than this, likely substantially more, and spending it efficiently to catch up on where you are today, or just license FSD and be done with it. And I think the TLDR here is just license FSD. It would take any automotive company a long time to spend $10 billion licensing Tesla's full self-driving for their vehicles. And if they do, they're going to be making a profit the whole time. If any company wanted to catch up with Tesla starting today, they would have to actually spend more. If you think about a race, like a 100-meter dash or something like that, if you start at the same time, you can run at the same speed. In other words, spend the same amount of money. But if Tesla's already 50 meters into the race when you start, you're going to have to run a whole lot faster than Tesla, which effectively means spending, a lot more, maybe double, maybe like $20 billion a year or something, some crazy numbers like that. So this is the kind of thing that makes it sound almost impossible to catch up if you really think about it. And of course, on top of that, Elon said efficiently, you can't just throw it like a dumpster fire and just hope it's going to work. That's not going to be effective. You have to use the money very, very efficiently to be able to do the training and catch up to Tesla and pass them. So with that in mind, let's revisit my favorite slide from their Q1 earnings deck, this bottom graph down here, Tesla AI training capacity H100 equivalent GPUs. So if you don't know, H100s are NVIDIA's almost state-of-the-art chip. They've now been supplanted by Blackwell's, but it's a good benchmark. In other words, you can have A100s, you can have Dojo compute, you can have a lot of other things going on, but it's just kind of a metric to measure things by. So an H100 is one of those big giant, graphics cards that you can't really buy it for your computer because they're way too expensive, but it would be the same kind of thing as a gaming GPU except on steroids, right? So that's just a single unit like that. So anyway, it's just a way of measuring the equivalent compute power, which is a reasonable metric. And so if we look at this back in September of 2019, they have, somewhere around maybe 100 H100 equivalents. So that is not a lot of compute. Now, of course, they had a lot more GPUs than that, but they were not as efficient as H100. So the equivalent was very, very small. And you can see over time, it builds and it builds and it builds, but very, very slowly until we get to March of 2023, we're still not even at 5,000 H100s. And that's just a year ago. But then all of a sudden we get this big stair step and we're up to somewhere around 37,000 H100 equivalents. And of course, as Elons catalog pointed out, this right here to go from December 2023 to March 2024 cost them about $1 billion. That of course was the cost of buying H100s, getting the data centers, getting the electricity, hiring people to install all of this stuff. There's a lot of pieces to that. And of course, installing hardware into their vehicles as well. So of course, me being Mr. Spreadsheet decided, hey, what would this look like if we extrapolated to the end of 2024 and we get to the 85,000 H100 equivalents that Elon is talking about. So here you can see the quarters since September 2019 up to December 2024. The boldface, of course, are my estimations, and all of these are very rough numbers because, of course, as you can see, these numbers here are not marked out very specifically. So just realize I'm looking at a trend here, not at exact numbers. So you can see the trend going and going and going as we were, and eventually you get up to March of 2024, which is right here at about 37,000 H100 equivalents. But then you can see how this entire graph is dwarfed by this next 9 months that's going on here. That is an amazing amount of growth that's going to come out in a very, very short amount of time compared to this. I mean, this entire thing is flat. By the way, this also looks very much like an exponential curve, right? You've got the thing where it looks very, very flat all the way through, and then you hit the hockey stick moment. Yeah, it's not perfect. It's obviously lumpy and all, but you can definitely see the kind of compute hockey hockey stick. Now, this won't go on forever. Eventually, there will be a roll-off to it because there's just not an infinite amount of compute in the universe, so you can't do that. You can't go on forever. And also, Tesla's just not going to need that much compute eventually because they will solve full self-driving to an extent that they don't need to go as crazy about purchasing new compute power as they have. Now, of course, when they do that, they will have the option of selling this AI compute to, people like me, researchers and people who own small companies and can't afford to have data centers of their own. We could actually purchase some time on these machines to do AI training ourselves, which will be really, really cool. But anyway, in the short term, this is obviously an exponential curve, and who knows exactly where they're going to stop this. Maybe they want to get up to 100,000 H100 equivalents or 200,000 or whatnot. Now, according to Elon, we are talking about a breakdown here where we've got training compute versus installed car compute. So it's not $10 billion just on training. And just to run some rough numbers again, Sandy Munro has estimated that the cost to install hardware for and the cameras and everything in each Tesla is somewhere on the order of $2,000. That may be a bit of an underestimation, so use your own numbers if you want to substitute for that. But if we assume that Tesla sells about 2 million cars this year and it's $2,000 per car for installing that hardware, then we're looking at about $4 billion to install the inference compute in all of these vehicles. But that still leaves the lion's share, 60% or $6 billion, being spent on training compute instead in these large data centers. How is that going to be divided up? Well, we know Tesla has got gigantic orders for H100s in, so they're getting them in all the time. But we also know that Tesla has been working on Dojo. They've been a little bit mum about exactly what the progress of Dojo is, but we heard, gosh, it was 6 or 8 months ago that Elon said that they were doing useful work on Dojo chips and Dojo computers. And we know that they've developed a Dojo 2.0 tile and potentially a Dojo 3.0 tile. We just don't know until we get sort of an AI Day update or something. But we do know that they've been working on that. So some of these H100 equivalents are almost definitely Dojo compute, but we don't know what the mix is. And of course, developing and taping out and making your own chips is much more expensive than purchasing chips from somebody else. So that also probably tails into the amount of expense that they're doing. But whatever the specifics of what Tesla is doing, the trend is very, very clear. They're spending an inordinate amount of money to get to full self-driving, to get to the point where it's actually good enough that it is substantially better than humans. Elon in the earnings call said that he thought the metric was probably 2x as good as a human driver. So in other words, if you did it by accidents per mile, the standard metric for human drivers is about 500,000 miles before an accident. So if they can get to 1 million miles of completely autonomous driving, that's not including humans. At present, it's about 5 million miles between accidents, but that of course is with a human in the loop sitting in the driver's seat and potentially disengaging under safety critical circumstances. If you haven't seen my video on that, definitely check it out. But anyway, if Tesla can get to 1 million plus miles between accidents of completely autonomous driving where there is nobody in the driver's seat or no disengagements at all, that's the metric where I think that they will try to push to get robo-taxis driving in specific areas. San Francisco would be the logical start because that's the city that is the most friendly to robo-taxis. And of course, this giant spend on AI compute is not just for Tesla's full self-driving, but also for Optimus, the Tesla bot, because as Elon and many other people have pointed out, the total addressable market for humanoid robots is orders of magnitude higher than for full self-driving vehicles. So clearly they're not using all of this compute just for Tesla's full self-driving, but that is the short-term goal, is to get it to be a solved problem. So they have 99.99999, some number of nines after the decimal point of safety where it just doesn't have any interventions. And then you could consider it more or less a solved problem, and they keep, chipping away at it to add a 9 every once in a while. So for sure, that's Tesla's short-term goal, but also you have to add in the fact that they know that this won't be just a one and done sort of thing. And they're like, oh, now what do we do with all this compute? Because they will have human labor in the form of Optimus, and they'll be able to use that AI compute to be able to train Optimus and make it better and better very, very rapidly. So that takes us back once again to Elon's post. Tesla will spend around $10 billion this year in combined training and inference AI. And again, it's about a 60-40, it seems like-ish. The latter being primarily in the car. Any company not spending at this level and doing so efficiently cannot compete. And like I said in my response, you probably need to be spending more than Tesla is spending in order to compete. So what are other automotive companies to do? Well, the obvious thing is to license Tesla's full self-driving. If I were you, I would get in line first because you'll probably get better rates. And by the way, not to stir up the pot too much, because I know Elon and Jensen have a good relationship and Tesla and NVIDIA do, but Tesla could definitely step into the arena that NVIDIA is trying to own. With the kind of spend that Tesla is doing on AI training and compute, I wouldn't put it past Tesla to try to compete in that space as well, although they always have tended to just operate on their own. But with Tesla potentially licensing full self-driving to other automobile makers like Ford, for example, that seems to be the obvious front runner for the people that they've been in negotiations with. Why wouldn't they potentially license the brains to other robot manufacturers so they can just work on the mechanics of the robot, and Tesla can provide the brains both in terms of the hardware and the software, and become a competitor to NVIDIA in the giant total addressable market that will be human labor in robot form. And man, if Tesla did that, there would be fireworks, because I do not think that NVIDIA would be very pleased about that. All right, so that's what I've got. Let me know what your thoughts on all of this are. And while you're down there, if you wouldn't mind liking and subscribing, that would be amazing. It really helps out the channel. In the meantime, don't forget, on May 4th, I'll be hanging out with Sandy Monroe in Detroit, and you can come join us. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.